So without further ado, in this video I just want to talk to you really quickly about rhythm and the way I'm thinking about it when I'm transcribing. So rhythm is about how we describe when events occur, notes, drum beats, rhythmic patterns, structural events, everything basically, how they occur in time and how we notate that. And so as you can probably imagine, if we're talking about everything from the length of the entire song right down to the smallest note, we have all these different scales of time in our piece of music. So at the largest scale, we have the length of the entire piece. Down from there, we have the length of structures. So that might be, you know, your classic ones, verse, chorus, A section, B section, etc. And these might be in the region of 30 seconds, a couple of minutes. Down from there, then we have individual bars, and those bars are sort of the largest scale rhythmic patterns that we start to hear. And you might be familiar with 4/4, where we have this 4-beat repeating rhythmic structure. And then inside of each bar, we have the subdivisions of that. Dictating the length of our bars and our subdivisions is the BPM that dictate how long each beat is. That's just a measurement of how long in time each of our musical beats is. And then other musical parameters that interact with all of these things include things like swing, or groove, or feel, or pocket, which are subjective words that we use to describe the detailed placement of our beats and sub-beats. Because a beat in music isn't an absolute thing. Although we might notate a specific position for a beat, in classical, in pop, in jazz, it's very common for that one particular beat to be offset, to be really late, or to be really early, in fact. And different positions of these sub-beats give us our groove, our feel. But we're not going to get into that right now. That doesn't really help us with notation. So now we could use what's called a rhythm grid to do our rhythmic notation, which visualizes each of our bars as a string of squares that we divide up into smaller squares. So if we're staying in 4/4, these are each of our main beats. And then inside that, we have our smaller subdivisions. And if we really want, inside that, we can do our even smaller subdivisions, like so. And when we want an action to occur in any of those subdivisions, we shade in the square that we want a rhythm to happen in, like so. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 is what that would sound like. So music, we want to be fancier than that. We're going to use proper musical symbols. It's not too difficult. So let's quickly cover what those symbols are. So we're talking about subdivisions. If we stay in 4/4, I'll do it up here. So our subdivisions look like this. We have our bar or whole note or semi-breve is a musical term. Looks like that, just a circle. That semi-breve whole note splits in half into 2 half notes or minims, which look like that, a circle with a stem. Each of those minims splits into 2 quarter notes or crotchets. And they look like this, a filled note with a stem. And in our bar of 4/4, there's 4 of those. They then split into 1/8 notes, or in music, quavers. And they are filled with a stem and a tail. Those quavers then split off into 16th notes, which we call semiquavers. And they are filled with a stem and 2 tails. And so on underneath that. I'm going to stop notating all of these out. Those are our notes which say do an action. But what about the gaps from our rhythm grid? Well, in music we call those rests, and they also have their own notation. So our semi-breve rest looks like so, a sort of fat horizontal rectangle hanging underneath one of the lines of the stave. Our minim rest looks the same, but it sits on top of one of the lines. Our crotchet rest looks something like that, or like that, a little squiggly thing. Our 8th note looks like that. And our 16th note rest has got 2 tails, and so on. So using all of these symbols, we can renotate our rhythm down here. So music, we don't subdivide inside the bar, we just have bar lines. We can write 4/4 there. So we have a note here, note here, note here, note here, note here. I put all the note heads in straight away. And in our rhythm grid here, you can think of these maybe as like a semiquaver with a semiquaver rest, another semiquaver with another semiquaver rest. But most of the time, that's too fiddly for us musicians. So we would normally write 2 quavers, like so, bat, bat. Here we need to do something that I haven't talked about, which is to dot a note. And if we put a dot next to a note, it makes that note 1.5 times the length it usually is. So our crotchet there is normally 4/16 notes long. But when we dot it, it turns out 2 more. So there's our 4. Half of that is a 2, and they get added on the end when we dot it. Generally, we like to avoid using rests. So we're going to use a dotted quaver here. So the quaver would normally be that long, but we need it to be half as long again into a 16th note or semiquaver. Then this looks just like our first beat, and that's the same as our second beat. Now, we can kind of make out the rhythmic structure there, but without these beat subdivisions, it gets really difficult to see how all of these notes lock together into the bar, how they describe the beats, how they work together, where the beat is, basically, which is there, but it's not very clear based on that. So in music, we have this wonderful thing called stemming. So we combine notes together to leave gaps where the beat lines are in the bar. We really like to stem together inside of a beat, especially in the half bar, but especially in the beat. So we can see where the beats inside the bar are. So to notate that properly in music notation, it looks something like this. So we beam our first 2 quavers together to look like that. Then we're going to want to beam these 2 guys together. There we've got a dotted quaver, so that's fine. And we've got a semiquaver up here now. When we have semiquavers that are beamed, like they have 2 tails, we give them 2 tails on that. And then the rest of our bar comes out looking the same. Why don't we do some of these again, but beaming? So our 4 crotchets in a bar is fine. They never beam together because we want to really clearly show where each of those beats is. What about a run of quaver notes? There's our quavers. Well, we can either beam them like that, so we have really clear 1, 2, 3, 4. Or you often see them beamed together in 4, like that. So we still see where the middle of the bar is. That's always really essential, but we don't necessarily need to see the beats inside. Same's true with 16th notes. That's what 4 16th notes beamed together looks like. And they have the same value as 2 quavers or a crotchet. Beaming can be quite fiddly, and that's something that you kind of have to practice, and there are rules that sometimes you can break, sometimes you're not allowed to break. It can be quite personal, your beaming. So if those are the symbols and the rules, and hopefully I've covered that in enough detail to make some sense. We can now maybe talk about my technique for that. So in addition to the idea of a rhythm grid and the idea of musical notation, of your crotchet, quavers, your semiquavers, you might have heard me in some of my videos doing like verbal counting. So there's this very common verbal counting, particularly for counting semiquavers, that can be really helpful in helping you understand where the beat is. So I'm going to use the rhythm grid just to show you, so I can write these words in. Everybody knows how to count like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. What about counting quavers like this? 1, 2, 3, 4. What about if we had a rhythm like that? How do we count this subdivision? Well, we have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. But you might say, how do we then count the semiquavers inside of that? Well, we have more words for that. And we still have one and, but we add inside of that E and A, so that our semiquavers become one E and A, like so. One E and A, one E and A, one E and A, two E and A, three E and A, four E and A, one E and A, two E and A, three E and A, four E and A. And so when you're transcribing, you have these ways of thinking about the subdivisions, of counting the subdivisions, and then as the rhythmic pattern that's happening in that piece of music comes in, if you have those subdivisions running in your head, or if you're counting them, you can hear when those events arrive. And using that, you can notate practically any rhythm. One E and a, two E and a, three E and a, da 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 da. So for example, if we were to notate a nursery rhyme, ba ba black sheep, have you any wool? Ba da 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 da. That's a 2-bar pattern in 4/4, and it looks like this: ba ba black sheep, have you any wool? 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. So hopefully you could hear there that ba ba black sheep, 4 crotchets, like so. Have you any wool? Goes like that. These are quavers, and that last note is a minim. Ba ba black sheep, have you any wool? Of course, as always, there's far more detail to get into, but hopefully those few pointers can really help you out next time you're trying to notate a rhythm. Thanks for watching. Bye.